Turn 7. Mandalika, a paradise island sold to sponsors as a festival of speed, but the first lap carried the stink of a back-alley hit job. Marc Márquez, freshly anointed 7-time world champion, his resurrection story still dripping in disbelief, was torn from his Ducati by Marco Bezzecchi's desperate rush. Metal shrieked, bodies flew, and the asphalt claimed its offering. When Márquez landed, his right arm betrayed him again, the same cursed limb that had already stolen 5 years of his prime. He clutched it like a soldier cradling a fatal wound, but the cameras didn't linger. Ducati had already completed their triple crown the day before. Riders, constructors, teams. The pit wall laughed for the press, champagne spraying like shrapnel, as if Mandalika hadn't just staged a crucifixion. Bezzecchi? He apologized twice. A sorry that sounded more like a plea for mercy in front of corporate judges. Tardozzi offered platitudes, too much in a rush, but the whisper behind his words was obvious. Bezzecchi's mistake nearly turned Ducati's golden narrative into a bloodstained scandal. Was Mandalika really a coronation? Or was it the perfect cover-up, victory banners masking another broken body, another pawn sacrificed to keep the Ducati empire's illusion alive? Expectations for Indonesia were painted as inevitabilities. Ducati's dominance had become less a prediction and more a ritual chant. The GP25, marketed as evolution, whispered about as a self-killer, stood under the spotlight. The narrative pushed by Bologna's mouthpieces was simple. The machine was flawless, the riders interchangeable weapons. All Ducati had to do was turn up, and the island would kneel. But nothing in MotoGP is clean. The week leading into Mandalika was riddled with tension disguised as smiles. Bezzecchi carried the weight of trying to prove himself, a young Italian with the speed to torch anyone, but no leash strong enough to restrain his impulses. He had shown pace all weekend, and his name was in every whispered prediction. He could win here, said paddock prophets, but win for who? For himself. That is always the fracture line, team glory versus rider ego. Márquez, on the other hand, had nothing left to prove and everything to protect. 7 titles, 108 crashes since the cursed Jerez 2020, and yet he had clawed his way back to the top. Mandalika wasn't supposed to be a proving ground. It was supposed to be a stage to reinforce the myth, the old assassin reborn, wielding Ducati like a weapon after years of dragging a crippled Honda through trenches. Instead, fate twisted the knife again. The factories were watching each other like mob bosses at a sit-down. Yamaha still licking wounds from irrelevance. Honda's ghosts haunting every conversation about Marc. KTM lurking in the shadows, hungrier than anyone admits. But Ducati was supposed to be untouchable. 8 bikes once, now 6, still an empire. The whispers, though? They questioned the heart of the machine. GP25 looks like a ghost, muttered engineers off the record. It rides the rider, not the other way around. The evidence had been stacking. Pecco Bagnaia struggling for rhythm, Alex Márquez flashing pace on last year's GP24 that humiliated the supposed flagship. The cracks were visible if you stared long enough. And so Mandalika arrived with a script already written. Ducati dominance, Ducati celebration, Ducati inevitability. But what nobody wrote into the lines was the opening lap chaos, the impatience of Bezzecchi, the curse of Márquez's fragile shoulder. The stage was set for triumph, but the air smelled of gasoline and betrayal long before the lights went out. MotoGP sells speed, but it thrives on suspicion. The lights dropped, and the race began like every war does, with chaos disguised as order. Engines roared, 22 men sprinting into turn 1 like gladiators charging a kill pit. Bezzecchi shot forward like a man possessed, too sharp, too desperate. Márquez, boxed in but calculating, had already measured the field. He knows the first lap isn't for glory, it's for survival. But fate doesn't negotiate. Turn 7. The moment stretched thin, then snapped. Bezzecchi lunged, the Ducati bucked, Márquez was launched skyward, the air sucked out of Mandalika. When he hit the ground, cameras caught his right arm instinctively clutching itself. The same cursed limb. History repeating itself with sadistic precision. One rider down, one empire rattled. But the race doesn't wait for blood. The field stormed on. Behind the chaos, Bagnaia struggled. The reigning champion was supposed to lead the war, but instead he looked like a ghost of himself, fighting the GP25 rather than dancing with it. Lap after lap, his pace was inconsistent, like a boxer swinging at shadows. KTM sensed blood. Binder pressed, Acosta flashed brilliance, reminding everyone that hunger is deadlier than reputation. Aprilia hovered, opportunistic hyenas waiting for Ducati's golden lions to stumble. Every lap told a different story, every corner a conspiracy. Tire degradation or tire games? Who really benefits when Michelin's compounds mysteriously suit some bikes and betray others? Rain clouds threatened overhead, the eternal wild card, as if the gods themselves wanted to keep the script uncertain. Meanwhile, Ducati's pit wall wore masks. They had lost their new king on lap 1, but the narrative machine had to spin. Focus on Bezzecchi's pace before the crash. Focus on the triple crown secured. Focus on anything except the uncomfortable image of Márquez, limping, his arm trembling, the myth wounded again. Was it talent? Was it luck? Or was it betrayal? The question hung with every overtake, every failed lunge, every glance back at the replay of turn 7. MotoGP is a battlefield, but Mandalika looked like a courtroom. Every move felt like evidence. Every rider like a witness or an accomplice. Who broke first? Easy, Bezzecchi. His rush, his impatience, his reckless decision. The paddock may frame it as racing incident, but those are just courtroom lies. In truth, he cracked under the weight of expectation, rushing to prove himself and instead becoming the assassin of Ducati's prized champion. But he wasn't alone in collapse. Bagnaia folded in silence. The GP25, Ducati's weapon, looked more like a traitor. It smoked, it fought, it bled time. The rider who once embodied calm domination now looked like a man trapped in quicksand. Ducati may want to sell the GP25 as progress, but the results scream betrayal. The pit wall? They cracked too. Their statements reeked of damage control. Tardozzi's carefully measured words, "too much in a rush," were less about Bezzecchi's future and more about protecting Ducati's image. Smile for the cameras, toast the Triple Crown, bury the footage of Márquez clutching his arm. And Márquez himself? His body broke, but his myth did not. He walked away, limping, grimacing, but unbowed. Yet every scar whispers louder. 4 surgeries, 108 crashes since 2020, now another possible collarbone, maybe ligaments. How many times can one body be rebuilt before it becomes more steel than man? Was Mandalika a race or a revelation? Every collapse pointed to a deeper truth. Ducati's empire looks solid, but its foundations are cracking. Let's strip the carcass bare. Bezzecchi's move wasn't just a mistake, it was a symptom. A rider desperate to assert himself in a system that eats its young. Ducati fields too many hungry wolves, and sooner or later, they start biting each other. The GP25? A fraud dressed as evolution. When last year's GP24 in Alex Marquez's hands outperforms the latest masterpiece, what does that say about Bologna's engineering myth? Ducati sells domination, but beneath the surface, the GP25 rides like a ghost. Bagnaia? He's no longer the assassin he once was. Doubt has infected him. Marc's presence in the same garage is a curse. Every lap compared, every weakness exposed. Champions collapse not in crashes, but in silence. Bagnaia's silence at Mandalika was deafening. And Márquez? He is MotoGP's eternal contradiction. The man who should have quit 5 years ago, yet refuses. The champion reborn, but chained to fragile flesh. His injuries aren't just scars, they're plot twists. Every race becomes a gamble with destiny. So was Mandalika a triumph for Ducati or a scandal? They secured their trophies, but trophies are distractions. The real story was the blood on lap 1, the broken arm, the whispered doubts about the machine, the fractures in the empire. MotoGP thrives on speed, but it lives on suspicion. And Mandalika left more questions than answers. Did Ducati really dominate? Or did they just choreograph another illusion? Was Bezzecchi reckless, or was he forced into desperation by a system that values chaos over control? Was Márquez cursed by fate, or betrayed by his own factory's obsession with image over safety? The podium told one story. The asphalt told another. Mandalika wasn't a celebration. It was a crime scene painted red and gold. Ducati lifted trophies, but the air reeked of gasoline and guilt. Márquez walked away broken yet unbeaten. Bezzecchi bowed in apology. Bagnaia looked like a ghost. And MotoGP itself reminded us, every victory is suspicious, every scar is political, and every handshake may hide a knife.